Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I know you've had breakfast. Good morning. Thank you very much for that question. And I'm so glad I got to attend yesterday's session. And I think, like Robert said, they really unpacked a lot that has set the right tone and foundation for our discussion today. So I'll speak to youth and women engagement by first speaking to who are we leaving behind, even when we're talking about AI, when we're talking about participation. And I think for me, I'd first of all want to speak to young women's engagement in that particular platform. And when I speak about young women's engagement, I'm particularly concerned about young women because of also their representation when it comes to the democratic space. And I'll be specific to the Kenyan context and the implication for AI, AI on their participation in the next election. So as we currently speak, young women represent less than 1% of young people who are elected in Kenya in 2022. Why do I say that? In 2022, we had 16,100 candidates on the ballot, right? From the presidency all the way to the member of a county assembly. So whether you are running as an independent candidate or within the political parties, we had 16,100 candidates. Of that number, 14,000 were men, about 2,000 were women. Okay, 14,000. And about 2,000 were women. So it means even when we digress a bit and talk about the 2/3 gender rule, there's no way we could have achieved it, right? Because we're talking about 2,000, and that is the total number of women, both old and young, who ran for office in the last election. And of course, we know how many were elected, right? So I'll be specific, like I said, to young women. Of the 1,450 MCA seats in Kenya, only 14 young women were elected. 14, not even 50. And overall, we only have 20 young women who were elected in the last election, right? So I think that context for me, it's important. So when we say, who are we leaving behind, we are very, very keen because it's so easy when we talk about women in general and not clustering. When we say women, what kind of a woman? Rural, urban, senior, young, right? And when we talk about even double marginalization for women, so the face of women in politics is a senior woman. No offense to senior women. But the face of the youth in politics is a young man, right? So I'll pick up on what Robert has said also about gender-based violence on the digital spaces and how it continues to be a barrier, right? But even when I speak about gender-based violence in the digital spaces and how it continues to be a barrier, I'd like to reflect on what is it Dr. Mina spoke about yesterday, that in the democratic space, political speech is high value, and then we have commercial speech that is also middle value, then vulgar speech is like low value, okay? But then when you go to the digital space, it's the other way around, right? So you have the vulgar and the other commercial speech that tops up as opposed to the political speech. So it means even when we are on the digital platforms, what are you consuming? What are you likely to consume? Right? And for us, even when we talk about young people engagement, and still circling back on yesterday's conversation, the challenge of, yes, the shrinking civic space, but that also our intolerance and the nature of how we are conversing on the digital platforms, right? So we did a survey and we were asking young people, and especially young women, when you're online, what are you consuming? And political discourse is not the first one. Right? So if political conversations and discourse is not the first one, how does that affect how you engage in the civic space, in terms of understanding your rights, understanding how to show up, understanding what to do, you know, and how to contribute to meaningful civic participation in this country, right? I think political discourse ranked at number 4, right? And even the platforms where we're consuming this, still even our data showed majority of the young women are also not on Twitter as compared to young men who are on Twitter. So they are on TikTok, they are on Instagram, they're on Instagram stories. But then when you're there, what are you consuming? When you're on those particular platforms? That is one. But then 2, as women now, generally, because you said I also speak about women, are we producers enough of information? So we did speak about the implication of ChatGPT yesterday, right? And when you ask a question on ChatGPT, so let's say, for instance, right now, my member of parliament, let's say Honorable Asha, who I respect so much in the space, is keen on finding out what are the women's issues in Starehe constituency, right? Because we've also seen how political leaders are leveraging digital spaces. What are the issues? What are the top issues in Starehe constituency? And she's just on ChatGPT trying to figure out, right? So ChatGPT is pulling information from everywhere. But because me and you do not produce information, we're not producers and are more of consumers, so whatever information that ChatGPT is going to aggregate, and if she's ranking that, so maybe roads will be the first one. But when you think about a woman who's struggling with unpaid care work and lost, they can't even access economic opportunity, they can't even access credit, are they producing that information enough for Asha, who's legislating, to pick that information from the digital spaces? You see? So even when it is aggregating, even if she's using AI tools to understand the demography that she is representing, how are we contributing to what she is picking up in that particular space? So we're also not producing enough content as women. And I'm saying that because even on Twitter, a simple post about what do you think about where this country is headed, just look at the comments. So for me, I'd just like to speak from practical experiences, right? Just look at the comments. Pick any blogger, any political blogger, pick any political leader, even the one that is serious that you follow. Look at their comments. Mainly young men, mainly men, mainly insults. But me and you, right, who are being affected and understand that particular question, what are we saying? Even on that particular, just on the chat, what are we saying, right? So there's also how we consume information and how we produce information that marginalizes us even further when it comes to how we contribute to the democratic space. And I'm saying that because platforms like Instagram, they have 2 billion active users monthly, 2B, right? Platforms like TikTok, 1 billion monthly active users. Average time spent on TikTok by whoever is on TikTok, imagine, average time 58 minutes. Average time 58 minutes, right? What does that mean in terms of what you're consuming within the 58 minutes, in terms of us enriching the the democratic space? So there's that. But then I think I'd like to speak to 2 more things. The dangers as well for this particular engagement. So Elon Musk is against deplatforming, right? And we've seen even the conversations he's leading, the memos, he keeps on sharing. So he's against deplatforming. When we talk about gender-based violence in the online space, so what's the implication of that when it comes to reporting someone? Because if you're calling, if you're calling gender-based violence freedom of speech, so I have reported someone using the tools on social media, the reporting tools that are provided for on different social media platforms. But if that is considered as a free speech, right? What are the implications of that in terms of me continuing to engage, right? Because there's a lot of silencing that is happening. 1 in 5 women are actually quitting social media platform because of trolling, because of cyberbullying, right? And we've seen right now also with the images that we're able to create with AI. We've seen the cloning. I was following the other day even just the American election, and I'm saying there was a popular celebrity who they used their deep fakes to show they were supporting another candidate. What are the implications of that for us? When someone else is used and their voice is used 1 week to election to show that they're actually supporting presidential candidate X or they're supporting person X. What are the implications of that? Because most of us, especially even in the rural areas, are we able to differentiate? You know, I was laughing with Sylvia earlier on in terms of how even our own mothers, they just pick information on social media and they share it with you on WhatsApp in the family group, you know? And you're thinking, okay, mom, this information actually is not correct, right? What are the implications of that in terms of them differentiating what is real and what is not real? In some of our sessions that also Sylvia has attended, when we work even with social media influencers and even young people, sometimes we put images, both a fake image, an AI-generated image, and a real image, and it's becoming harder and harder to tell the difference of an AI-generated image and a fake image. Now imagine an audio, you know, like an audio where you already have Asha's voice. Yes, you don't have a face, or you even have a face, where you have Asha's voice and she is saying something. What's going to be the implication of that, you know? And lastly, let me just speak to good governance, right? Lastly. So for me, also when it comes to good governance, we also cannot just talk about access to AI and technology if we also don't talk about access to basic needs like electricity. Someone in a country struggling with electricity, are they thinking about the implications of AI? They're not thinking about the implications of AI. So even alongside the conversations we are having, even about AI, how then we tie that to good governance, right? How do we tie that to that? Because if you're not even having access to, whether it's the smartphones, whether it is electricity, the last thing you're thinking about is this. And then it meets you in the election time, and we're like, okay, where do we even go from here? And I'd also love to appreciate Shakira Wafula, one of the leading voices during the Gen Z movement, who's here in the room, and to also appreciate, please let's appreciate Shakira Wafula. And I think to also just appreciate how the Gen Z were able to use specialized GPT to create images, songs, and videos that were able to amplify the messages of the movement. And that's the other side of using AI to ensure that we also do not leave anyone behind. Thanks.
Let's clap for Mina for that wonderful presentation.